What's happening, people? Scarface Personal here. Welcome back to another one of these weekly shows. Today, I'm joined by, once again, a fantastic panel. Two of them with me now. Jack, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Harry. Thanks for having me on. It's a beautiful day over here on the East Coast of the United States. Bright sun in the sky, middle of the afternoon. Got me out of doing some work, so I'm very happy to be here.
No, thank you very much for coming on. Also, a massive welcome to Jim from So Spurs. How you doing, Jim?
Doing very well, thanks, Harry. Always great to see you.
No, it's great to have you on. Thank you very much. And welcome on to the podcast, Davina. How you doing?
I'm all good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you very much for coming on. It's great to have you.
Nice to be back.
Should be a good one. No, it's really nice to have you once again. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It's free to do so. It does help the channel grow. If you listen after on a podcast platform, don't forget to drop us a follow and a 5-star review. Massive shout out to our partners in the Kitman, where you can find all your genuine classic past season football shirts, shorts, scarves, for affordable prices. You can buy former player memorabilia from the Kitman, and you can use the coupon SCARFY15 for a 15% discount. So I want to review firstly the season first. I'll start with you, Jack. So we've drawn 1-1 with Leicester. We beat Everton 4-0 and we've lost 2-1 to Newcastle. What are your overall thoughts? Has it not been the start you'd hoped for?
No, it's not been the start I hoped for. I was really counting on sitting on at least 5 points coming into the derby, but it's not one that I didn't expect. I actually was assuming that we were going to struggle a little bit early on. Unlike last year, I thought this might start off a lot more slowly. You know, we sent a lot of players out towards the end of the window. The squad looks significantly different, even if the starting 11 doesn't look significantly different. But I kind of expected this to be a little bit of a slow start this season. And maybe that was just preparing myself for the results that came. But I haven't been too disappointed. I thought the performances have been mostly good. Obviously, we're struggling to finish when we need to get the goals that you need. But overall, I've been fairly pleased with the way the team has played. I think they've shown unlike many people online, I think they've showed some improvement over last season in many respects.
Okay, no, that's really good to hear. I think it's always about that bigger picture. So that's really interesting. So thank you. Davina, what are your thoughts on the season so far? I think we can all agree, 4 points out of our 3 games. It's not what we wanted at the start of the season. But do you agree with Jack that it's not quite as bad as some people are making out?
I think we were a victim of getting used to how well we started last season. And it was sort of like a lot of people were comparing our first 10 run of games to our start this season. And like Jack said, we have a very different squad. We were unlucky to also lose our signing of the summer, Solanke, after our first game, which was just hilarious. And I think for me, I think it's a more realistic start compared to last season. I think last season we got very lucky on a number of occasions. And for example, against like Sheffield United, there are also some games which we played excellently, like that first game that we had at home last season against Manchester United, which I probably can remember like minute for minute how that game went. I loved it. I think it is more realistic given that I don't think our transfer window was the best, and I don't think we've signed anyone that massively improves our first 11. So I think it sets us up more realistically about how the season's going to go. It's going to be a long season. I think people need to remember that. With 3 games in, there's no need to be overly optimistic, no need to be overly pessimistic. We're in 4 competitions with more fixtures. Like Europa League has more fixtures than we've ever had before. So I think I don't think it's like as bad as people think. And I also don't think that we've massively underperformed compared to where we should be. I think it's a very realistic view of how our season's going to go this year. So it's not sort of like one way or the other. We've got 1 win, 1 loss, 1 draw. So can't be too disappointed. Obviously can't be too happy.
No, I think I really agree with you. I think you summarised it nicely. So thank you very much. Jim, I'll come to you and say, kind of question. Do you think we've underperformed in the first 3 games based on the fact we only got 4 points? What have you made at the start of the season? Do you look more into it than just the results?
Yeah, I don't like to get too carried away with points until about 2/3 of the way in the season, because the thing with football is we all play fixtures in different orders. And when you take a linear comparison against other clubs, it's actually the wrong way to look at it. It's not actually a like-for-like comparison at all. I think there's two ways to look at this. Like in terms of point gain so far, yes, I think if things have gone the ways they should have been, we should have an extra point at least from those games, but we haven't. But when I look at the transfer window itself and how I feel coming out of that, I feel really positive. And I get why people will say, hey, we haven't really put significant upgrades on that first 11. But if you go back just 12 months ago to the squad we had then, you look at right wing, we only had Kulusevski and then Son rotating onto the right as an option there. We had Kane, who was already out the door, so we only had Richarlison and Son again as strikers. Left wing was reliant once again on Son and Richarlison as our only options. So pretty much across the whole front three, we had three players. We had Kulusevski, we had Son, and we had Richarlison. That was it, because Perisic obviously had a season-ending injury and Kane was out the door. But then you fast forward this season and you look at the right wing, you're going Johnson, Odegaard, Kulusevski, Son, Moore. Up front, you're going Solanke, Son, Richarlison, Lancashire. On the left, you're going Son, Odegaard, Werner, Moore, Richarlison, Johnson, and Yang. So I feel like what we've done is we've moved our squad into this modern era where you stop looking at it as two players in each position and you start looking at your squad of how do I have a very versatile squad where I've got 16 players who can accommodate, 11 different positions much more deeply with that flexibility. And it's the same in the midfield, right? We had last season when Ange took over, it was pretty much Bentancur and Sarr as our midfield options on the right, and then Bissouma and Skip on the left. And then this season, you've got Bissouma, Bentancur, Gray, and Sarr, and then Bentancur, Bergvall, Kulusevski, who's now moved into that role as an option, Sarr and Gray. So I think there's a lot more depth, and the squad's a lot more well organized than it was, even though I completely agree with the feedback that the strongest 11 from last season isn't notably a huge step up on the strongest 11 this season, but the squad depth is significantly better.
Okay, thank you very much, John. That leads me on to the whole talk about the transfer window. So thank you, Jim. You kicked that off rather nicely. So Jack, I will come back to you. What are your overall thoughts on the transfer window? Like if you had to rate it out of 10, again, has it been as bad as some people make out? Have you been left short in a few positions? What are your overall feelings now the window slammed shut?
Yeah, so my thing with transfer windows is that while we all enjoy, I'm from a channel, we all do this, to rate the window is a big thing, but we all know that it's going to be 12 to 18 months before we really have any solid idea how good the window is, because we don't know how Solanke's going to perform. We don't know if Bergvall is going to end up being a starter. We don't know if Gray's going to end up being a starter. Odegaard's got a lot of promise. We don't know. So on the incomings, I kind of give it like a 5 to a 5 or a 6. I think they're good young talent, very unproven, very talented. We're clearly buying young. We're clearly not going after maybe the top wingers and top forwards and backs in the world, competing with other clubs, as many of us would love us to. But at the same time, so much focus was put on clearing out the payroll, clearing out the squad. And on the outgoing side, I got to think, I don't know anyone, even some of the biggest critics of the club, haven't rated at least an 8 or a 9 on clearouts. He made some tough decisions. It's hard to see some of your homegrown players like Skip go out the door, but if the decision is not suited, not good enough for the system, you have to make the hard calls. He's got to go out. They got a decent fee for him. Same thing with Højbjerg. They split opinions. Both players split opinions a lot, but they got him out the door and got some. Would expect some money come in once the obligation is made next year of the buy. So I think that I'm personally very high on Solanke. I think while he's not necessarily a better player than Richarlison, I think he's better suited for the system. Tactically, I think he's better in the hold-up play. He's better helping us in the build-up, and I certainly think he attacks the goal a little bit better on the ground. So I think he's a better striker to start. I'm very optimistic about Odegaard. Jury's still out on Johnson. I know he splits a lot of opinion, but overall, I'd say it was a decent window. But given the fact that a lot of us thinking here, hey, here's the club that's champion of the PSR, right? We've got all the space, we've got all the money, ability. Newcastle can't do anything. No one knows what Chelsea's doing, but other clubs aren't doing a lot of activity. This is our chance, and it feels a lot to us like a missed opportunity. But what we don't know is who was really available, who was really going to come to Spurs. Was Eze really even considering? Was Tony really ever in the mix? And there's so many players that people wanted to be signed, but it takes two people. It takes both the player and his agent plus the club and the selling club to make that decision, and it doesn't always come together as you'd like it to. So I think overall the window was fair, not game changing or season changing, but I'm with Jim, is that the squad overall is more balanced. I think we're short in defense. I'm a little mystified, or not mystified. I understand. I'm a little disappointed in the decision on the Europa League squad with Spence. I think that could come up back and bite us. We can talk about that if you want. But overall, I think it's a more balanced squad overall, and I think I'm relatively optimistic about our chances coming up this season.
Okay, no, that's generally good to hear. I think that's again, it's nice. Something that's nicely summarised and very balanced in terms of. I think you're right. We don't know what the window's going to be like. When maybe it's a bit different. And Bensko and Kulusevski coming, they did kind of hit the ground running, but January window's different in that aspect. But even like last summer.
Yeah, in 2019, we all thought we had a fantastic window, right? I mean, that was the thinking, is that 2019 was a banger of a window, and we all see how that came out. So it doesn't always work out the way you think. So it takes a little time for that to kind of develop, and we'll know what we had. By this time next year, I think we'll have a much better sense of what kind of window we had.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't know until further on you go. So no, I think that's really fair. So thank you very much, Davina. What are your overall thoughts on the window? Any frustration for you that we didn't do or did do that we shouldn't have?
I think the frustrations for me was for the lack of times we were linked with players. Like we all know the world that we live in now, that we know of any conversation that is happening. Apart from this year, we got like a shock signing, which is so funny. I remember the meltdown on Twitter. We were linked with the player 20 minutes earlier from a journalist that like was tier like really low, and then we're like, cool, Spurs have announced that we signed a player. But generally 99% of the time we are usually aware of any player that we are linked with, and I think it was quite frustrating seeing the lack of times we were linked with players, especially in areas that we'd identified as fans that we would have liked back up. For example, in defense, maybe we could have bought a more lethal winger, but it's I don't know. I completely agree with Jack's point that you have to be more reflective on a window and a squad, like retrospectively. At the time, someone could think that we've had a great window. I even remember like 2021 when we brought back Bale, and everyone thought we just signed so many players. But we've got Rodon in that window, I think, as well. And yeah, we signed quite a few players, and people were like, "Wow, we've had a really great window." And then we started the season quite well until like we beat Arsenal, we beat City. It was a good start to the window, and then we all know how that season ended, and it was a bit of a capitulation. So it's all about balance, being a bit more level-headed about reflecting on the window that we've had, building on the squad that we've had, not making unnecessary signings, especially when we found how hard it is to get rid of Deadwood. I completely agree with the outgoings have been amazing. All the players that we've struggled to get out the door, we've managed to get probably everyone that we wanted to, and it has been bittersweet. We've had players leave us that we've had really great memories with, been really sort of key players for the club, and I would have liked maybe 2 more signings. Let's see what our activity is like in January, depending on how far we get in other cups. But yeah, I think rating wise, if we're thinking about how to rate it out of 10, bar Solanke, who I think was a great signing for us. I was a fan of him even when he was at Bournemouth, and I'm very happy that we just went out and paid the full price, because I know that we've often sometimes gone for like cheaper options, cheaper alternatives in the past. It was nice to see us go for an actual Premier League player. I'd probably give it about a 5, a bang on average window, because I think us as fans, after Solanke, we didn't really see any links, and that was quite frustrating. So I'd give it like a 5 out of 10.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, Jim, earlier you did touch on the transfer window. What would you kind of rate it out of 10? And do you think we've done really well? We have mentioned it, but the outgoings, I think we, like Davina said, we got everyone out that we probably would have wanted to, if not more.
Yeah, if you want to separate the window into two halves and then balance out an average, it would be higher than a 5 for me because the outgoings are so strong. But I don't think that was what Davina was answering there. I think she was more focused on how would you rate how the squad has evolved based on the squad from last year, incomings wise, which is why we'd have different numbers there. I would say that everyone wants to behave like Brighton until their club behaves like Brighton, especially in the transfer window. And Davina, you touched on it there about the lack of communication around what players we're linked with and all that kind of thing. It's not the club's job to keep us updated with who we're looking at. That would be counterproductive. But still, knowing who we're linked with provides you a sense of security. We're doing something. And the club has completely put the blockers on that, blocked all the leaks. So when we don't know what's going on, it's natural to feel frustrated because you just want answers. You want to have that sense of security that we are moving forward and we are making decisions to sign players that we know we need. But I would say we've got a decision to make as a club, which is a tough one. A lot of people in the comments there are talking about Timo Werner as an example. Why on earth would we renew that loan? And it's an interesting one because you've got to choose. Do you want to sign a player who's going to be that standout, big marquee name who's undroppable in the side? That has a knock-on effect. We also want Mikey Moore. We also want Yang. And we also want Odebear as young, exciting prospects. And Bergvall, players like that to have a pathway to starting in the team. But if you go and sign out-and-out starters, their pathway is blocked until that player is moved on or rotated. So I feel like the likes of Werner are there as a stopgap. They're purely there to say, hey, you plug a gap for 12 months because we've signed this young player in Yang and we're bringing through Mikey Moore from the academy. Heung-min Son's in the last year of his contract. He may or may not extend. So it's time to look at that future pathway. We've got to leave it open for these young players to sign with us and stay with us. Otherwise, they're going to go somewhere where that pathway is offered to them. And Crystal Palace have effectively moved themselves from relegation candidates as a club to an established mid-table club from a similar methodology. It's saying to really talented prospects, come join us and I'll put a release clause in your contract that says it's going to be at a value that a club like Tottenham, Man U, whoever can afford to take you if that opportunity arrives. But for now, you're with us and we have now kind of ring-fenced some of the best promising talents in the league. Now we're a level up from that. We're saying to these young players, come to us, you'll play for us. And as the team grows, it will grow with you. There's not a release clause there, but don't worry because we're going to challenge for things ourselves in 3 or 4 years when we get there. But also we all know as Tottenham, if Real Madrid come knocking or Man City come knocking, there's not much you can often do if that player's, decided they want to go. So there is that pathway that's open to them. So long story short, answer your question. I'd give it if I compare it to the squad last season, I'd give this transfer window a 7, but I can see why people would think it was more of a 5 or 6 in their eyes. And if I even look at the 10 position, right? Last year we had Kulusevski alone. Now we've got Maddison, Odebear, Kulusevski and Bergvall. So we've got 4 players in a 10 position when we probably had 1 the year before. So again, it depends what your expectations are. If your expectation is a title challenge, it's a 5 out of 10 window or 4 out of 10. But if your expectation is fighting for 4th and being favourites for 4th, maybe, then for me it's a 6 or a 7. So
yeah, and I think I completely agree with all of you, but no, thank you very much. I think that realistically we're not ready for that title race. Whatever you put that down to, I just don't think it's right. And we talk about marquee signings. Let's use Arteta as an example. I don't like to, but we are playing them this weekend. It links in perfectly with the show. But we saw the marquee signings come in, 3, 4, 5 years into that project. We didn't see it come in the first. This is a second start the second year under Andrew. We didn't see those Salibas, those Rice come in that early. So I think a bit of patience is needed. We added that squad depth. Whether it be enough to compete in the Europa League or not, we have to see how injuries go and how the season kind of progresses. It'll be interesting to come back to this later on in the season. But we talk about young talent. One individual I want to talk about briefly is George Abbott, because a big Notts County podcast host took to X the weekend to say that he's still not over that George Abbott performance yesterday. That 90 minutes told me Tottenham Hotspur have a future first-team leader to look forward to and potential captain. He was everything and more you want in the midfield, the lads, the talent. I mean, Jack, that's what you want to hear, isn't it? I mean, we talk about exciting youngsters. One that doesn't often come up is George Abbott, but you hear this. I know, obviously, completely different standard, but still instantly coming in and making an impact. It's what we want, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see. It is basically his first professional start. He hit the ball out of the park, right? And it's a good club. They've come a long way out of the National League. Obviously, they got some ambitious owners behind them. And one of the things that Spurs have struggled with for pretty much the length of time I've been a supporter is getting good quality loans for their academy talents. Now, is that partly because we haven't had a lot of talent in the academy to begin with, and so that's the reason why the loans haven't worked out? I mean, you take Dane Scarlett, who seems to struggle, everywhere he goes, even though he seems to have talent. But now we're starting to get people in, some of these young kids out there, and I think George Abbott is certainly one that's been flying under the radar. Even more so than Tyrese Hall. Everyone likes to talk about Lancashire, talk about Mikey, talk about Donnelly.
Yeah.
But Abbott showed some really nice work in preseason, and I think he looks fantastic at only 19. I think he's just maybe turned 19. I'm not sure.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's great that he's getting a good start because you get down as a 19-year-old in League One. That's real football. I mean, it may not be the prettiest, may not be the most technical, but you got to be able to hold your own. If you're playing in the engine room where he is, you have to be on your toes. You have to be looking your head on a swivel. And if you can play there, that's a good sign. I'm really excited about that. So I'm hoping that Donnelly does well at Leyton Orient. They've gotten off to a tough start, clearly. But I'm hoping that, same thing with Davina joining Vucevic out there in Belgium. I hope that we're now finding quality loans for what clearly I think is maybe the best group of young players that this club has seen in a decade, maybe. Kane out, was an outlier. But other than that, it's Winks and Skip. They're the only ones who have come through, right? So hopefully this is the new dawn where that, like you're saying, Jim, that we don't want to block the pathways for these guys by signing marquee players in their mid-20s on 150 to 200,000 a week and clog up the squad with, not clog up, that's the wrong word, get the squad with those players without a place for the young kids to come through. Because that, I think, really what excites fans. That's why they want to come see. They want to see, one of their own come through and play. And I think that's a good sign. The club has clearly said, I mean, they stated publicly they want to be a club that the best young talent in Europe wants to go to, and that's the mission. And if that's what we're going to do, let's hope it's successful, because competing with City for talent is a loser's game. Probably same thing with Real Madrid. You're just not going to keep your best players if those clubs come in. So you got to have a pipeline of really talented and experienced players who have been playing football for a couple of years at professional level.
Yeah, no, nicely. I completely agree with you. Thank you very much, Jack. Davina, we mentioned George Abbott there. Are there any other, I say any other youngsters that excite you? I'm sure there's loads, but if you could narrow it down to just one or two, is there any that you're going, I'm really, really looking forward to seeing this one? Like, if you could choose one in particular that you think can be a potential superstar and that excites you the most out of all of them? I find it hard to choose when this comes up.
That's an incredibly difficult question, but I think like a lot of what we saw in the preseason was quite exciting to see. I mean, the fact that we had quite a lot of youth involved. I mean, like Mikey Moore's probably like the first name that a lot of people would choose as well. That's really exciting, and the fact that like I think it's one of the biggest contracts that Spurs have given. He turned 17, or did he turn 6? I can't remember, but this was like towards the beginning of the season. That's when he signed his new contract. And I think that's a real testament to Spurs buying into their youth. And coming back to where our players are going off on loan, I think it would be great to see more players stay sort of in the English football system to go off on loans, because I think it gives them I'm not saying that going off on loans in Europe by any means is a terrible idea, but I think staying in like the Championship and like lower is a really good way to sort of get more recognition for our youth, because there are a lot more English football fans who will have these names in the back of the mind, like the appreciation that we got for Abbott. It was really nice to see, even on Twitter, like you could see a lot of praise, and that builds confidence in the fact that your club or your club's fans are also able to recognize the good that you're doing. And I think it sets up a really good sort of foundation to coming back into a club like Tottenham after you've played lower league English football. I think the players that you played against and sort of the systems, the type of football that you play won't be too dissimilar to the types of football that you play in the Premier League. So I think it'd be really nice to see a lot more of our youth go on loan within the country.
Okay, yeah, no, I do agree with you. I think something we haven't done in the past, like if you get under Paratici, that kind of era, is we didn't get players out on loan. I think we're kind of feeling the backlog of that. And I don't necessarily put it down to Paratici, to be clear, but I think when we have managers like Mourinho, Conte, I would say Nuno, but he wasn't here long enough to really have an impact. But I feel like the youth academy was neglected a little bit. I feel like it was win now, rather than what can we also create in the future. So I think that's been restored, the focus of the youth academy, because winning now is very, very important and probably the most important. But also you want to give yourself that leg up as well for the future, which I think we've done really, really well at. But Jim, is there, what young player excites you the most? Is it Mikey Moore? Is it Lancashire? I mean, we mentioned George Abbott there to pop his name into the conversation.
Yeah, it's got to be Mikey Moore for me, because the club is creating a pathway for a player that young. Shows a lot of trust, right? It's I think that was just touched on there, was the where we've let young players down. I think as a club a little bit was not being a bit more aggressive on pushing them out on loan, like was mentioned earlier, because you're going to learn more from a season in League One than you are playing for in the under-21s Division 2 league, typically, especially if you're at your late teens approaching your early 20s. Once you've hit 21 as a young footballer, if you're still playing in the under-21s for your Premier League side, it's extremely unlikely you're going to be getting a move into the first team if it's a good first team. So that's got to change. But there is a study that was done on successful academies versus less successful academies, and there was one very interesting correlation, which was the clubs with the most players coming through into the first team had a manager that had been in tenure at least 3 years at the football club. And that's because the philosophy of the first team starts to filter down into the youth team. And then once they start playing very similar philosophies and the coaches start to learn from each other, and it becomes much more well entwined, it's easier to integrate players from your youth team into your first team. And I think we're going to see that. It's another reason why I just think we've got to just really stick to this project now and give it 3 to 5 years to see the benefits of those things. But it is hard to integrate these players. You look at City, they've gotten Phil Foden through, but that was gentle baby spoon feeding him into a team very carefully whilst he's protected by the world's best 6 and all the best mentors on the planet, all the best coaches on the planet, just to bring one player through. And people will say, oh yeah, but all these other clubs have great young players coming through, like Liverpool. Well, they don't really. They buy the best 16, 17-year-olds from other clubs. They're not coming from
which is what we're trying to do as well.
Living pool. And it is what we're trying to do, because it's so hard to look at your little catchment area where you're competing against 20 other London clubs and then bring through those players. It's really, really hard. So, in answer to your question, it's got to be Mikey Moore for me, because I think the timing of him being promoted times well with the likes of Werner's loan ending, Sonny looking for a successor, as it were. And it pains me to say that, but that could be 1 year, it could be 3 years, we don't know. So his opportunity is there, and we're going to have more games than ever this year. Europe has more games than it did before. There will be opportunities for him to play, and it's up to him to take it now. And I hope he does.
Yeah, I hope he does. I completely agree with you. Archie Gray mentioned there. That's one that we didn't mention. I think so. I think Ange showed a real amount of trust with him in pre-season. I think it's a lot of money, to be honest with you, spent on someone who is going to sit on the bench. But this is what us fans have been saying. You need to spend the money. We need to improve squad depth. And I think we have done that. So, yeah. But I do want to move on.
Go
on, Jack.
No, there's one player I was going to ask if any of you have seen play a little bit. I've started to get a little bit more of this kid Vuskovic, who's now over in Belgium. I don't know if people have seen a lot of him. I have not seen tons, and it's dangerous to make any conclusions based on snippets that you get online and stuff. But this guy is enormous and moves like because the speed at which he moves, the power at which he can hit a ball, and the size. I mean, he's bigger than Van de Ven, I think, by an inch, according to what I've read. I mean, this guy's enormous. I'm really excited about him. He does get a lot of attention, of course, because he was in Croatia, now he's in Belgium. So I I think he shows up next summer, and I'm really excited to see what he can do, because with him and Phillips, that's where we all wanted to strengthen. We know we're the back line is very thin. The drop off from first to second is very large in certain situations. So I'm very excited about this kid. And that's an example. What you're saying is, Jim, finding the best 16-year-olds out there, bringing them in. And now we might finally have a squad in a few years where we're not worried about club trained in European rosters. So that would be quite nice.
And
Yeah.
just to add to that, Judge, like a lot of people don't realize around the FFP and PSR rules, signing youth players doesn't count towards your PSR and FFP limits, which as a result has meant the richest clubs in the world have trebled down on the idea of signing young youth players that have a sell-on value to boost their PSR capability in future, even if they never plan on using them. And that's kind of what has kept Chelsea alive up until this point. And as a result, there's more competition than there was before for these players. So it's even harder to get these transfers right than it was before.
Yeah, no, exactly that. I mean, Chelsea, don't know quite how they get away with it, but they seem to manage just about. I mean, that's a huge squad they have there. I mean, they brought it down a little bit on deadline day, but it's still a very overcrowded squad. But we will move on now to Arsenal. Jack, I'll come back to you. How are you feeling ahead of this game, and how do you generally feel ahead of North London derbys? It's, a lot of people go, it's just one I want to get out of the way, early doors. Let's just get it done. How do you feel?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly glad that we're starting at home this early. I would rather. I mean, I think obviously Declan did us a favor by deciding he didn't want to play in this one, so that's nice. But I mean, I would have liked maybe a one game, another game to play before I played Arsenal, just because to get the rust off a little bit. This team doesn't always do that great after long breaks, but no, I'm never. It's no fun leading up to it. The stakes are enormous. I have the benefit of there's only if I go to work, there's literally only 2 Arsenal fans in the entire building, right? So it's very easy for me to deal with as an American here. I don't have to, everyone I walk around isn't a fan of a Premier League squad, so it's easier for me to deal with. But still, just the anticipation and anxiety related to the match. The best thing for me is they're usually early morning, so on a Sunday morning I can wake up and the game's right on. I don't have to fret for hours beforehand, but I'm always nervous. I never have a good feeling about it. I never predict that we're going to win, just because the history tells me that not to get too excited. But given usually the home team takes these fixtures, I'm reasonably intellectually confident. I don't think Arsenal's hit the ground running. I'm not sure what the health is of the Italian. I'm not going to pronounce his name, but the Italian defender. Thank you. The Italian defender they signed. I think he's probably going to be healthy. I'm not sure that overall the rest of the squad depth. I don't think Jesus is healthy, but that probably makes them better if he is not available. So I mean, I think that it's going to be a tough match. Of course, they're one of the best teams, 2 or 3 best teams in the country, and it's just never fun to get ready for. But once you get there and you get excited, like it's great atmosphere. I wish I've never been to a North London derby. I hope to get there before too long. My daughter still lives in London, so there's always a good chance that I can get over for one of those and find some nice person who can't go to the game is willing to slide me their ticket. So that's my feeling. It's never good. It's never fun. It's never exciting to get ready. But once you get into it, I'm reasonably confident. I think the team has played well enough. I don't think Arsenal's significantly better. So playing at home with the atmosphere the way I expect it to be, it should be a really great match.
It should be, but I'm with you in terms of get it done out the way, and we start at home this year. So I think there's positives definitely to look at that. Davina, North London derby, how you feeling?
I absolutely hate the North London derby, and that's largely because I live in North London and I'm surrounded by Arsenal fans. I'm currently like taking a break before I start my new job. But at my last job, I was surrounded by Arsenal fans, which is always a nice sight. So I've been working there for 2 years, which included like going back to work after the Newcastle 6-1, which I attended, like losing the North London derby in an incredible fashion twice in those 2 years, the 2-1 and then just now in the 3-2. And it's never a nice feeling. Leading up to it, during the 90 minutes where I just feel sick. That's like the only way I can describe the whole feeling of it. I feel like just get the game over with, because I think in a game of that magnitude, no matter when it happens in the season, whether we're home or whether we're away, it just like form goes out the window, and it's just so utterly chaotic. I remember the 2 games from last season, the 2-2 at the Emirates, when we just had Ange Ball introduced And there was those like, oh, bring your suicidal highline to the Emirates and watch what happens. And we kind of went toe for toe with them, got a point, and that was brilliant. So the home fixture not so brilliant, going 3-0 down, but it like I remember those last minutes of the game where everyone was like, we could get something out of it, we can get something out of this, and especially in the situation that Arsenal were in a title race, it made me even more sick. I just hate everything about the fixture, and I've always marked it that I'm going to be so nervous leading up to it and afterwards, but I think it's even bigger this year because, and I thought all Arsenal fans were aware of this, right? Because 3 of them told me, and I did a tweet about it, and I think I've unknowingly given Arsenal fans some ammo. If they win this weekend, they will have more wins at our stadium than we have had at the Emirates ever. And our stadium's been open for 5 years, and theirs been open since 2006. So we've beat them twice. Once in the League Cup, and then, you know, like the Kabul header, like I'm sure we all remember that. That's the only 2 times we've beaten them at the Emirates. And they've beaten us twice already at our new stadium. So if they beat us again for the 3rd time, they'll have more wins at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium than we have at the Emirates ever. And I think that is an absolute disgrace, because having the other team win at your home stadium in a North London derby shouldn't happen. Like at the old White Hart Lane, when we had old White Hart Lane and the Emirates, it would usually be the home side which took the points or a draw. But that was pretty much standard, is what you'd go into the game expecting. And for the last 2 fixtures, us not getting any points from the home game has been a disgrace. Like, we haven't really seen much fight. I remember the 2-1 of now 2 seasons ago, and the 3-2 when we were going 3-0 down. I sit in the south stand, and people were losing their minds over the lack of fight that we saw. And I just hope that the memo comes through a little bit more. Put it in the changing room. Don't let them beat us at the stadium for the 3rd time. You know, we need to have a bit more, not anger, enthusiasm, motivation going into this
passion.
game. It would be great coming off the back of the international break. A lot of fans are pretty sort of lackluster after the loss against Newcastle, which going away at St James's Park is also almost as becoming as inevitable as a North London derby. So yeah, I'm terrified, but as a Spurs fan and enthusiast, I can only hope for, and I will predict a win.
Okay. Oh, save your score prediction. We'll come to that a bit later, but I like that. But you're feeling negative, but we're going to win. That just sums up, I think, the life of Spurs fans for you there. But Jim, I'll come to you. We can always rely on you for a little bit of positivity. How are you feeling the North London derby this weekend? It's fast approaching.
Yeah, I don't agree with much what Conte said, but he did come out with one good line when it comes to derbies, and that is a hot heart and a cool head is what you need to win an important game like that. And I feel like we've typically got they got that the wrong way round a lot of the times, and we do that against Chelsea. But looking at that game, there's a lot of reasons to go in it with some optimism, and that's if you look at the way Arsenal played their opening games of the season and how many points they need to win it. Right, you can only really afford to drop 20 points in a season where City are what they are today, even less last season, right, in 18. Arsenal have already dropped 2 points, so to lose, if they were to lose to us, they're already suddenly got 15 points left to play for, and they've still got to go away at the Emirates and away to Liverpool, which you expect to both to lose those games, and suddenly you're going, hang on. That squad's got 9 points to play with a load of really hard fixtures still to come to their ground and away. So I think if they were to lose to us, they're suddenly in a very difficult uphill battle for the season already. And they never experienced more than 5 consecutive major first-team injuries last season. They could be up to 6 players out for this game if Calafiori is also out, right, with Marino out too. And the way Arsenal played this season to accommodate for their injuries is with 2 8s behind the striker. And because they don't have a fit Marino, because he's already out injured, their new signing, he was meant to be that 8 on the left-hand side. They've had to put Declan Rice in there, which is a weird place for Rice to be. He'd like to be where Partey's playing. But now Rice is out. So they're going, okay, I've got to put Havertz up there, but I kind of need a left footer. So the idea is Calafiori would kind of invert from the left-hand side and go up to that 8 position and help out. But he might be injured as well. So what Arsenal have been doing to accommodate is they're so reliant now on Odegaard. Everyone talks about Saliba being the player that holds them in that place, but it really is Odegaard from a creativity perspective. If they lose him, they've got no creativity deep now because Odegaard's having to drop deep and do that creativity, and they've got no creativity in the pockets up front either, and they haven't really got a standout forward that you can think can bail them out with some amazing, beautiful sun-like finish. So if we get the pressure right on Odegaard and Partey in that game, and Partey always brings his best game to us because we give him so much of a hard time that he turns it on for us. There is a really strong chance that they're going to struggle. And the game against Villa, they tried that. They put a box around Odegaard, Rice and Partey, and they tried to squeeze them under pressure and really make them make mistakes. And it did work. The frustrating thing about watching that game everyone did, you thought they won 2-0, but it's a classic of good sides do it. They come out and win anyway. But you thought, that wasn't the same Arsenal I saw last year, where even though they lost to Villa, they probably looked better last year. So I think, look, it's really going to be a game where if we find a way of nullifying Odegaard out of that game, I don't know where the creativity is going to come from in that side. And we do have a very good chance, and we are going to press the hell out of Odegaard. Whether how he handles that is another discussion. And the last thing on him is I think 2 or 3 months out for a player like Odegaard will derail their whole season. And Odegaard's been seen as this like non-injury prone player that's fit every week. Well, before going for Arsenal, he had 2 chronic knee conditions. Like, it's an anomaly that guy stayed fit. And now he's got to play in Europe where he can't be rotated with extra games, and in the league season every week because Marino's now out. I think there's reasons to think that Arsenal could find themselves in a 3rd place fight, and it's Liverpool and City fighting for 1st and 2nd this year, which makes me enjoy the season more, because I can't enjoy a season where Arsenal are challenging for title. We could come 3rd and surpass expectations, but if Arsenal win the league, we come 2nd. I still couldn't enjoy it. I just couldn't. No. So,
and we can't be in a position like we were at the end of last season. Like, that was just awful. Manchester
City, horrible.
Never again. Never again.
Agree. I guess if you guys were at the ground, but like it was like, do I even want to go to this? I never want to be in that position again, where I'm like a season ticket holder thinking, do I even want to go watch my team play? Like, just awful.
It was awful. I agree.
Horrendous. Yeah. Thank goodness I wasn't there for that one. I missed that one. Not deliberately, coincidentally, but I think it was a blessing in disguise. But before we get on to score predictions, I want to go through lineups. So, Davina, I'll come back to you actually. What would your kind of lineup look like? Would there be any changes from the Newcastle game?
I think the only change I personally would, because I don't think we played horribly. There were great positives to take from that game. If only our attackers could finish their chances, like on another day in a parallel universe where everything that we shot was on target, we'd win that game really nicely and easily. But I think the only change I would make is, I don't know if it's confirmed whether Van de Ven is fit or not, but obviously if he's fit, then just slot him back right in. Otherwise, I don't think there's very much we can do to play around with our first team that is named by Ange.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you very much. Jack, what would your kind of team look like? I mean, obviously, as Davina did allude to there, it is heavily reliant on players that are available. Let's just say they are all available, like Van de Ven, Solanke. Let's say maybe Richarlison isn't, but those 2 are. What would your team kind of look like?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like Richie's fit, which again, just have to say, at Everton he missed 15 games in 4 years. Just throwing it out there. So back 5 picks itself. Obviously, like Davina said, if everyone's healthy, we know who's going to be our back line. We know who's starting in goal. I think Basuma is certainly looking much better despite his early preseason decision making. He's certainly playing much better, so I think he slots in there. For me, this is a game where the question for me really is Sarr or Kulusevski. I think that's the biggest decision that you have to make. Do you want someone who's going to be more solid defensively, who's going to be help covering for Porro as he goes forward more effectively, and then that leads you to a decision to play Sarr. But at the same time, Jim is right. They've got midfield issues. I think California is going to be healthy from what we're hearing. It doesn't sound too bad, but we'll see. But they are going to have issues in midfield with Declan out. So I would hope we could press we pressed really well against Newcastle. I mean, if you watch that game back, the number of turnovers winning the ball back in their third was phenomenal. As Davina said, if we just finish half the chances, that game is out of sight and not really an issue. So I think that's really the biggest for me. It's Decky because he gives us more going forward. And you're going to have Johnson, who seems to do better off the bench than he does starting. But I think he would probably play there as opposed to Odegaard. Solanke is definitely, if he's healthy, he's got to start in the middle, and then Son's on the left. And then obviously Madison's gonna start. So I think that's really the main decision point for me is who's in that third midfield spot, and I think I'm leaning towards Kulusevski for this match. But I would whatever Ange thinks, whatever tactics he's drawn up, he's paid to make those decisions. But for me, I think it's Decky.
Yeah, no, so do I. I think he's a lot better in the middle. Going to the YouTube chat, Ronnie has put his team in the chat, which I want to bring up because I find it really interesting. The back line, as we would predict, that kind of backfired, including the goalkeeper. He's gone Basuma as the holding midfielder, but it's gone with Bergevall in there alongside Bentancur and pushed Madison up somehow into that front three with Kulusevski and Son. I don't think we'd see quite that many teams like that, and I don't think it's how we start. But I find that really interesting. Jim, what would your team look like? Would you consider playing Bergevall, or is it just too soon for him?
It's always tempting to try your new shiny toy when things aren't working, just to kind of mix things up a bit. But I think when you look at the context of our last performances, the end result was tough to take, but there were steps forward in the performances. So I wouldn't risk that just yet. I think the starting games I'd like to see Bergvall in would be the next game in the Europa League, the opening fixtures. Let's see what he's like over 90 minutes. Let's see if he can handle the physicality, because we've seen other players come in the past who we thought, wow, they're exciting off the bench. And then you put them in for 90 minutes and other teams target them physically and they struggle and it knocks their confidence. And then there's a bit of a downward spiral. So a bit about protecting these young players as we bring them in. So I not necessarily what I would do, but I think Ange will probably put Bentancur and Basuma in the middle, just because he'll probably look at Bentancur and go, you're a senior player, you've won trophies, you've played in derbies, you're probably more likely to keep a cool head in this game. And on your day pre-ACL, you are our best midfielder. You probably haven't been our best since your injury, but you have it to be if you can recover fully. And then the obvious one is Solanke coming in up front. That with Solanke, we'd have beaten Newcastle. I'm pretty confident we'd have won that game, or at least got a point. So he slots straight back in if he's fit.
Okay, that's really interesting to hear. I think, I'm not quite sure what my team would look like. As you've all again alluded to, it is dependent on who's available, but Solanke's available for me, goes straight in there. But Richarlison is a real shame. He's becoming injury prone for us. But before we wrap up, predicted score, going no particular order. And Jim, I'll come back to you. It's harsh on you haven't had time to think at all. What was your score prediction for this game?
Well, we're not going to keep a clean sheet, and we're going to have a halftime meltdown about something, or we wouldn't, the whole of last season was having a meltdown at halftime at our home games, all crying and consoling each other in the ground, and then, arguing about it as we have our pints halftime, and then at the full time we're all hugging and can't believe we've won it. So I'm going to go actually go 2-0 down at halftime, mass pessimism, with a 3-2 win at full time. Everyone's staying until the end. The concourse is rocking at the end of the game.
Okay, I love that. I mean, you're not the only one with 3-2. Matty in the YouTube chat's gone 3-2. Jay's gone 3-2. Ronnie breaks the trend, if you like, and goes 2-0 Arsenal, but James has gone for 4-1 Spurs. I mean, wow, I'd absolutely take that. But I suppose the logic, you think about it, Declan Rice out, they haven't got that protection to the defence. I completely agree with Jim that Odegaard is more important out of the two, but what Arsenal will turn up, I don't know. Jack, what will be your score prediction? Can you keep the optimism up? We've got a lot of people in the chat going for Spurs wins. Yeah,
well, I think Jim, you're right. There's goals in this game. Both teams with the injuries that Arsenal have, I think we're going to get chances. The intensity I expect to be very high. So there's no clean sheet on either side, which of course means it'll be 0-0. I think that for me, I'm leaning towards a draw. I'm thinking 2-2 is my outcome, and I think that's hedging just because I can't like Davina. I didn't know, I hadn't processed the stat of if they win again, then they've got more wins at our new stadium than we've got at the Emirates. So for that purposes, I'm thinking it's a 2-2 draw, which is not the worst result at all. But going down 2-0 at halftime, I'm not sure I can survive that. I'm pretty sure there's a whole lot of people I know who are not going to make that. There are going to be problems all across the country, I think, for people at home and in the stadium. If it's 2-0, that's just, I don't even want to see that, Jim. But it would be exciting to play out what you think. So yeah, I'm sticking with just a plain vanilla 2-2 draw for this one.
Okay, that's really interesting. Again, we've got more draws appearing in the chat. I'm going to go 1-1. I like to try and be optimistic. I can't see us getting anything other, anything more, should I say, than a draw. Davina, you said earlier that you weren't confident generally with North London derbies, but you fancied a win in this. Are you standing by that?
Can we just go back to the fact that Jack said a 2-2 would be a vanilla 2-2? Because it definitely wouldn't be. It would be like, there'd be like a sending off, there'd be like a VAR check of like a really fractional offside. There is no way that a North London derby happens and someone goes, yeah, that was a really vanilla game, and it ends up 2-2.
Yeah, fair enough.
I was just like, what? But the 2-0 down at halftime is always something I will not tolerate, because that is atrocious to go 2-0 down at home. I think there will be a meltdown inside of the stadium. People will not be happy on Twitter, everywhere in the world, inside the stadium. I feel like there will be boos at halftime. We can't be having that. I'm not buying into this negativity, no matter how realistic we want. I'm going for a 3-2 as well, but 1-1 at halftime, and then it will be a ridiculously painful, chaotic second half, but we'll get the 3 points.
A lot of this depends as well on which side we kick off on. I hate it when Spurs kick off attacking the south stand. I like the second half to be attacking the south stand, and it feels like we're sucking the ball towards the goal. Absolutely. And there's always a comeback on. When it's the other way, I give up. We're going to lose if we're down half time.
I specifically remember that as well, like, attacking the south stand. But my core memory of that is Sheffield United when they came, and then we scored the 2 last minute winners, and then all of the players were celebrating near where I sit, and I have a picture after the goal, and it was just beautiful. And I completely agree. We need to be second half attacking the south stand, and I just remember looking up and see Romero running down the pitch trying to get the winner, and I hope that's what happens on Sunday.
Let's hope so, and let's hope he gets the winner as well. The fingers crossed. But no, that wraps us up nicely for today's show. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. A lot of you in here listed, a lot of people in general, don't smash the subscribe button. We're only 3 away from the next target of 2,300 subscribers. The aim was to get there by the North London derby, so that looks possible. So please, if you could do that, if you're listening on the podcast platform, don't forget to drop us a follow and a 5-star review. A lot of you listen right to the very end, so we do appreciate each and every single one of you. Big up the chat, for some fantastic questions and your contribution as always. But also thank you to the panel. We're going to go where we can find you across social media. Firstly, Jack, thank you for coming on. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you find me 2 places. I am on the Cheese Room podcast periodically as a guest, and also a channel member and operator of what used to be the Cheese Room podcast YouTube channel. We rebranded in the famous world, supposedly, of the famous United coach, Lads, It's Tottenham, is the rebranded channel on YouTube. You can find us, our social media on X is It's Tottenham.
Fantastic. Go check it out. I'll definitely come on that at some point. So they go check out Lads It's Tottenham. Davina, thank you very much for coming on. Once again, obviously it has been a while, but really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you across social media? I mean, I say this, they should know, shouldn't they? But if they don't, where can people find you? I'm
everywhere really, but the main podcast I'm on is at No Ratings, and if you just find me on my Twitter, Davina_THFC, just everything Tottenham.
Everything Tottenham. That's what we love. Thank you very much for coming on. Jim, really, really appreciate you coming on. It's always fantastic to have you on. Talk to people about your podcast, Oh So Spurs, as well, because it's doing very well.
Yeah, Oh So Spurs is the podcast. I know, Jacka, you mentioned a few. I know Gibbo and HG very well. So, yeah, love your show as well. But yeah, so Oh So Spurs is the show. Our kind of thing is that we steer away from any conversations about whether, the ownership are right or wrong for the club and try focus purely on the football. And we only discuss finances when it's statistically driven conversations, not, around, because we try avoid those specific debates. Not that they're not worthy of having, just that I think people find it a bit of a safe haven from those places when they don't want to have those topics, even though they are important. So yeah, Oh So Spurs, find us on YouTube or on X/Twitter. You can find my personal one, Jim Oh So Spurs. I only just started that up, but yeah, you find my personal stuff on there.
No, definitely. I think sometimes, the ownership conversation does get quite boring, and we all support the same team. We want to get behind the team wherever you kind of stand. There's not one person isn't going to change anything. We just got to crack on, deal with it, support Spurs. But let's hope for a North London derby win. A draw wouldn't be bad, but a win, especially at home, would be absolutely lovely. So massive, come on you Spurs. Hopefully the next time we'll be talking, we will have won the game.
Working as a manager at Celtic Park when we met you. We picked you out, you shook us up and turned us around. You've turned us into something new. Ange Postecoglou, you know that we believe it when you say you're gonna change it. Ange Postecoglou, we're the mighty Tottenham and nobody's gonna stop them. Oh, he looked so fine in blue and lily white. And then he said to me, I'm from a land down under. Postecoglou, baby. Postecoglou, oh. Postecoglou, baby. Postecoglou, oh. Postecoglou, baby. Postecoglou, oh. Postecoglou, baby. Postecoglou, oh.